I'm BJ Griffin with ibsportstv.com. All mixed martial arts today, but first, it's Twitter time. Welcome to Twitter time, where we retake your favorite sports figures, tweets, and we talk about them. The first segment of Twitter time is going to come from Dana White, where he says in his tweet, "Holy expletive, that is one of the nastiest KOs I've ever seen!" Exclamation, 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 exclamation. Now, of course, if you all saw UFC 131, which we're going to talk about here in a second, if you saw that, you saw Sam Stout deliver the nasty KO to Yves Edwards, and that was ridiculous. I mean, Yves Edwards was stretched out, his eyes were rolling in the back of his head, his legs were shaking. It was looking totally crazy, and I really didn't think Yves Edwards was about to get up. I mean, it was looking bad. He was down there for a long time, and it's real good that he was able to get up and walk out of the octagon. So good for him. Yves Edwards might want to think about hanging it up or something. This dude had about 60 fights. He is 40-17-1. That is a whole lot of fighting for somebody to do. But Sam Stout, big ups to him and his iron, concrete, whatever they are, hands. And we're going to move into this UFC 131 recap. UFC 131 recap. Let's talk about the main event first. Junior Dos Santos versus Shane Carwin. Now, this was just a bloodbath, if you will. Now, it ended with Junior Dos Santos winning via unanimous decision, but it could have easily been stopped in the first round when Junior Dos Santos started beating Shane Carwin against the cage. And when Shane Carwin got up after that onslaught, his face was totally messed up. I mean, good job to him for not stopping the fight. But if he had to stop the fight, I would not have blamed him at all. I would not have blamed him at all, because it was looking real nasty. And big ups to Shane Carwin for letting the fight go all the way to the unanimous decision and finishing the fight out without being knocked out or anything like that, because Shane Carwin was taking a beating. Shane Carwin just got totally outboxed. I remember he got rocked a couple times. I remember he took this big kick to the face from Junior Dos Santos, and it looked like he didn't even faze him. He kept going he kept going like nothing happened. And I was like, oh man, that kick would have knocked out a lot of dudes, but it did not knock out Shane Carwin. So big ups to Shane Carwin just for hanging in there. And next for Junior Dos Santos, it's Cain Velasquez. Now, whereas before I would have thought Cain Velasquez would beat Junior Dos Santos for sure in a fight, now I'm not so sure, because Junior Dos Santos' boxing looks so crisp in this fight. And guys, Shane Carwin's boxing is not bad at all, as he has pretty good boxing. Junior Dos Santos he looked crisp. You can see he carries those heavy hands, and I honestly think Junior Dos Santos versus Cain Velasquez now can go either way. So that's going to be an interesting fight to see, possibly towards the end of the year. And we're going to move into this next fight, Kenny Florian versus Diego Nunes. Kenny Florian versus Diego Nunes. Now, Florian made a very successful drop down to featherweight. He ended up winning this fight against Diego Nunes via unanimous decision. Now, Diego Nunes, in my opinion, won the first round, and then Kenny Florian came and won the next two rounds, and Kenny Florian just looked extremely crisp. His cardio, whereas where people typically when they cut weight and they move classes, they have a hard time with conditioning and stamina. Kenny Florian just looked, he didn't look winded at all, and he just looked extremely good. Very good looking fight from Kenny Florian, and Kenny Florian is looking at a fight against Jose Aldo. Now that, after seeing the way Florian fought today, that could be a real good, exciting fight that I honestly feel like could go either way. So Kenny Florian versus Diego Nunes. Diego Nunes, very tough fighter. He hung in there and he didn't look bad in his loss against Kenny Florian. Let's move to this next fight, very exciting heavyweight bout with some UFC newcomers. Dynamo versus Herman. Dynamo versus Herman. Now this was the best fight. It just was. Herman, I mean, he got rocked by Dynamo and then just came back and started and just threw this onslaught. I mean, they were rocking each other back and forth, but Dave Herman really just came out on the top. And when he hit Dynamo with that big knee, it just, oh man, it was very devastating. Actually, Herman hit Dynamo with a couple knees, and it was a real exciting, mostly stand-up fight. Now, Dynamo didn't really get a chance to display his high-level jiu-jitsu, but you know, he should, in his next fight, he should get a chance to show a little bit of that. And while this fight didn't have the cleanest striking, it was very, very exciting. And I'm excited to see both men's next fight. Now, it's interesting because Herman actually said that jiu-jitsu doesn't work. Now, I was watching Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour online show where he actually talked to Dave Herman, and Dave Herman ended up changing it to jiu-jitsu doesn't work on him. Now, I really don't see why, especially somebody who practices this kind of stuff and knows and is a fighter themselves, I don't see how you would come to the conclusion that jiu-jitsu doesn't work, because it's a lot of real skilled folks in jiu-jitsu that really pull out a bunch of their wins via submissions. And I feel like anybody is, I mean, Ariel Helwani's argument was that the arguably the best guy at the time, pound for pound, Fedor Emelianenko, was submitted via triangle to Fabricio Werdum, which is of course jiu-jitsu. And Dave Herman didn't have a whole lot of rebuttal for that, and that's when he changed to jiu-jitsu doesn't work on him. And Herman's argument was that jiu-jitsu, if you know anything about it and you've trained in it a little bit, then you can stop whatever's coming, which I think is a little bit ridiculous. But of course, you know, what do I know? It's not like it's like I practice jiu-jitsu. But I mean, I just thought that comment was interesting. Now, Dave Herman is a real interesting, funny guy, lighthearted guy, and I'm real excited to see the rest of his fights in the UFC. Let's move to Mark Munoz versus jiu-jitsu expert Demian Maia, which is a very exciting fight. Let's move into that. Mark Munoz versus Demian Maia. Now, Mark Munoz did end up getting the unanimous decision victory, and let me tell you, personally, I scored this fight 29-28. Two other judges scored the fight 29-28, but it was one judge that actually scored it 30-27. Now, if you all saw the first round, there is no way you could give that first round to Mark Munoz, because Demian Maia totally dominated, and surprisingly, he totally dominated with his stand-up. Demian Maia, that was one good-looking loss Demian Maia just got, because Demian Maia's stand-up looks vastly improved from his previous fights. I mean, he looked really good, and he actually rocked Mark Munoz a couple times. So I was extremely impressed with the stand-up that Demian Maia displayed in his fight against Mark Munoz. Now Mark Munoz did come out, and he ended up winning the fight. He ended up winning the next two rounds. He ended up winning the fight. But Demian Maia, I mean, he's really the story of that fight for me, and he didn't even win. So Mark Munoz stepped closer to the title. Demian Maia headed in the right direction, even though he lost, and it was a very exciting fight. Let's move into Donald Cerrone versus Wagner Roca. Donald Cerrone versus Wagner Roca, and Donald Cerrone ended up winning this fight via unanimous decision. Not a whole lot to say about this fight because it was total domination. Wagner Roca, his big thing is his jiu-jitsu, and he really didn't get a chance to use it because he couldn't get Donald Cerrone to the ground. Donald Cerrone, great takedown defense, and Wagner Roca, I mean, if you can't get the dude to the ground to submit him, you can't submit him. And Wagner Roca's stand-up didn't look very impressive. Donald Cerrone did look impressive on the other side of things, and really his conditioning was very impressive to me. That's really what stood out the most to me with Donald Cerrone, because he kept that fast movement and he barely looked winded after the end of those 3 rounds. I mean, I guess he does do all that training on his ranch and with Greg Jackson. And speaking of Greg Jackson, I mean, Donald Cerrone, he's really not a fighter. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's really not a fighter you would expect to come out of Greg Jackson's camp, because Donald Cerrone, first of all, he's real aggressive. I mean, he'll go and he'll try to finish the fight, even though this fight did end up being a unanimous decision. But he'll press the action and he'll try to finish the fight. Donald Cerrone, a lot of the folks in Greg Jackson's camp have that real humble, respect your opponent type attitude. But Donald Cerrone, he's a trash talker. He goes in there and he's real aggressive, and he's just not a fighter you expect to see from Greg Jackson. So I feel like that's real interesting. But for Donald Cerrone, great win for him. He's looking real good. A lot of the WEC guys looking pretty good in the UFC, and Donald Cerrone actually says that he wants to fight Sam Stout, and I think that would be real good, especially after Sam Stout's big KO win against Yves Edwards. And Donald Cerrone, the Cowboy, is real impressive, and I'm interested to see who he fights next. Now, that'll conclude the UFC 131 recap. Now, let's get into talking about a dude who does know a little bit about some jiu-jitsu, Fabricio Werdum, where he will fight Alistair Overeem, and I will give you guys my prediction on this Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix bout right now. Alistair Overeem versus Fabricio Werdum. Now, let's start with Alistair. Now, Alistair Overeem, he's holding 3 belts. He has the Strikeforce belt, the Dream belt, and the K1 kickboxing belt. So this dude, if there's one thing Alistair Overeem knows how to do, it is how to win in a fight. This guy, he fights all the time, and he wins these fights. And let's talk a little bit about his strengths. I mean, obviously his striking, his knees are just absolutely devastating, and he's no stranger to the ground game. He can actually make some things happen on the ground. A couple submission wins for Alistair Overeem. Now, Fabricio Werdum is just a big-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and his last win was a very historic win, knocking off the debated, arguably the #1 pound for pound best mixed martial arts fighter for Fedor Emelianenko, and submitting him in a triangle. Now, Fabricio Werdum is just, I mean, his stand-up isn't bad either, and obviously his strength is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Fabricio Werdum's last loss actually came against Junior Dos Santos when he was in the UFC. Junior Dos Santos, who of course just came off of his victory against Shane Carwin and is going to get that title shot against Cain Velasquez. So that was actually Fabricio Werdum's last loss. And let's talk a little bit about this matchup, Alistair Overeem versus Fabricio Werdum. Now, where the key point in this matchup, and where I feel like Alistair Overeem is going to win the fight, is the clinch game. When you have a guy who's trying to take another guy down, it's inevitable that clinch situation is going to come into play. And Alistair Overeem, if he gets those big knees in and gets in some dirty boxing and gets him up against Fabricio Werdum up against the cage, it can spell trouble for Fabricio Werdum, because Alistair Overeem clearly has the strength advantage and the size advantage, and Fabricio Werdum will be in a whole lot of trouble. And it's not going to be like when Fabricio Werdum fought Antonio Bigfoot Silva and he escaped that onslaught in the first round. I feel like if Alistair Overeem gets Fabricio Werdum in a situation like that Alistair Overeem is going to end the fight, because clearly this guy, he knows how to fight, and he fights a lot. So I'm going to take Alistair Overeem in this fight via first round TKO. Now I'm not saying that Alistair Overeem can't get caught in a submission, because it's clear that Fabricio Werdum can catch these guys in submissions. Fabricio Werdum, I mean, his stand-up, it really isn't bad either, but I just don't see the fight going there, and I really see Alistair Overeem being able to put the fight away early. Now, Fabricio Werdum, I mean, he has a little bit of stand-up, but I mean, he's not gonna be able to match up to Alistair Overeem, in my opinion. So again, I will take Alistair Overeem, do the first round TKO. Let me know your picks, and we're gonna close out the show right now. that's it for our mixed martial arts extravaganza. Now, the website is not up yet, ivysportstv.com, but it will be up in the coming weeks. Of course, we changed the name a little bit, and we're going by ivysportstv.com now because we're really trying to work the show through the website. And let me talk about some other things. Everything from now on, all sports and all topics are going to be thrown into one weekly video. And of course, I'll have the little sidebar, of course, where I will put the times each topic will be discussed. So if you want to see, if I have basketball in the video and you want to skip that and go to UFC, you can look at the time and skip to that point in the video, and you can look at what you want to see. Also, comment response videos will be integrated in these weekly episodes. That segment of these episodes are going to be called the viewer spot. So if you all want to be a part of the viewer spot and have me answer some of your questions, leave a comment in the form of a question in the comment box on YouTube, or leave it on Twitter or on the website when it comes up, and you can be a part of the viewer spot segments of IB Sports coming up next week, coming up very, very soon. Next episode is IB Sports. So this is IB Sports TV.com. I'm BJ Griffin, signing off.